Welcome to the Charter Quest CFO Case Study Competition, Episode 3. My name is Johnny Eliadis and I'll be your host in this episode and this whole series. If you remember in Episode 1, we spoke about this event, this competition, what it's made up of. We took you through the caliber of judges, which is very important. That's what makes this competition have such a high standard. We also took you through the 4 stages on what makes this competition work, how it works, how people enter this competition and how they get to the final stages of this competition. And then afterwards, what we did is in Episode 2, we spoke to you guys about the semi-finals. How does the competition work with the semi-finals? There are 6 teams that make it to the semi-finals, and what we did in Episode 2 is we spoke about the first 3 teams. In this episode, we're going to speak to you about the next 3 teams. So you will be able to see all 6 teams that made the semi-finals in 2016. My guests today will introduce you to these teams. They introduced you on the last episode to the 3, they will introduce you to the next 3. The person who's going to introduce the first team will be Tonolo, who will introduce you on team number 1. Thereafter, we'll speak to Patience, who will introduce you on team 2, and Tsekofatso will introduce you guys on team 3. That is what we're going to do in this episode.
Well, thank you, Johnny. Fourth was Team Snipers from Ghana, who made a strong case for 5 recommendations. First, hold the court case and deactivate all SIM cards in Nigeria. Second, enter China by acquiring CloudNet. Third, proceed with the SS in South Africa, but first, acquire stakeholder buy-in. Fourth, consolidate and expand in Iran. 5, choose debt, not equity finance. Let's take a look.
Good day, board members. My name is Deborah Furry, and together here with me are my team members.
My name is Abigail Amwako.
My name is Bismarck Opoe-Suman.
I'm Senor Edu. Together, we are the Snipers from Ghana.
We're here to present to you our analysis of the various issues facing MCOM and then make our recommendations. First, we'll look at the strategic position of MCOM using the SWOT analysis. Internally, we see that MCOM's strength lies in its good technical standing and better internal operations. However, the inability of MCOM to migrate to 4G is its key weakness. On the external side, MCOM has a number of opportunities, which includes the untapped market in Africa and Asia, as well as increasing demand for data. Nevertheless, stiff competition and imminent indigenization laws pose as a threat to the company.
Now let's look at some financial and economic keynotes. There's hyperinflation in Lania, which is not good for operations over there, and the company has currently been slapped with a hefty fine of 58 billion Sadiban dollars. That notwithstanding, we also have a fast-growing earning pension of 19% CAGR. We have a good interest cover of 4.8 times, and we have a fast-growing net profit margin. Now, moving on to the prioritization of the issues. The issues have been prioritized using 3 main indicators. First of all, the level of impact of the issue, the level of urgency, and the SWOT analysis as well. Therefore, the issues have been prioritized in this order. The first issue is the security crisis and legal wranglings in Akolia, and the last issue is the shared service center decision in Sadimba. We believe that all 5 issues are of great managerial importance and worthy of management's time.
Let's discuss our first issue, which has to do with security crisis and legal wrangling in Akolia. We have strategically analyzed MCOM's decision to pursue a court case and have come up with 2 options. It's either MCOM goes ahead with the court case or it halts the court case, asks for an out-of-court negotiation, and then pay the fine in installments.
Now let's look at a case-by-case analysis of these 2 options. Option 1, to pursue the court case. If the company decides to pursue the court case, they may succeed in drastically reducing the fine amount. However, this option holds bad reputation options for the company. We may also lose some subscribers in the process, and then we may as well have to incur some expenses by engaging the service of a legal expert. Option 2, to halt the court case and negotiate. Now, if MCOM decides to halt the court case and negotiate, now this option would avoid a further decline in our corporate image and would also serve as a process of redeeming our image. Additionally, we may not have to incur any other expenses because we wouldn't even need a lawyer. But the issue is that it threatens our strategic priority. That is because shareholder confidence in MCOM could be diminished, and then it will affect us gravely. We have also analyzed these 2 options using the Mendello stakeholder analysis matrix. First of all, 2 parties are involved. It's the public and the government. Now, it the public are key players because they have high power and high interest in the operations of of MCOM. Excuse me. Also, the public are the current subscribers of MCOM. Additionally, the public are unhappy with the NTRA's decision to reduce the fine amount. Now, it is the current government's topmost priority to maintain top security in Nakolia. Now, having analyzed these things, we totally thrash out option 1. This is because 1, MCOM has breached a fundamental law of the land, and then they must be ready to face the repercussions of the breach. Additionally, the security crisis in Nakolia has attracted international attention, and for a company that is seeking for its license to be renewed in a year's time cannot go ahead pursuing pursuing a selfish interest in battling the issue in court. Therefore, we should be sensitive with the national security and pay attention to the demands of the society. That is why we have discarded option 1. Now, we chose option 2, that is to hold the court case and negotiate. 1, the action plan should be MCOM should hold the court case and deactivate all the unregistered SIM cards immediately. Additionally, they should ask for an out-of-cost negotiation with the NTRA for the fine amount to be paid in installments. And conclusively, they should also appeal with the NTRA so that they will be able to re-register the deactivated SIM cards as and when customers make demands. This will help to recoup the loss in revenue.
Let's now move on to our next issue, which has to do with the Nakolia fine and suitable capital structure. From our first issue, we did recommend that MCOM should pay the fine. Now, my question here is, what is the suitable funding structure for the fine? Is it going to be through debt financing or equity financing?
Now, to properly answer this question, we have made an analysis based on the weighted average cost of capital module. Analysis reviews that the cost of equity is 15% and the cost of debt financing is 8.6%. Clearly, debt financing is cheaper than equity financing. Now, beyond this, we also realize that for a company that is battling with shareholder confidence issue, it's very unlikely for shareholders to be willing to commit more funds by way of equity fundraising or even by right issue. That is why we recommend that debt fundraising is the best. The company can raise funds even on the international market, through the Eurobond. We can also raise funds by acquiring bank loans or by issuing debentures. Let's not forget, debt finance gives the company a good tax shield. Additionally, we have passive investment in the Sidom Towers, which we believe we should sell off, because they are passive investment that needs to be monetized. Now, we have also adjusted the financial statement based on the other matters to be considered, and the adjusted net profit is 1,920 million Sadiban dollars. This adjustment has been made based on the international accounting standard. To be specific, we have used IAS 10, IAS 36, and IAS 37, respectively. Now, the auditors will be coming in 21 days' time, and we believe that the following are critical for audit consideration. First of all, the materiality level. Additionally, the analytical procedures that they will use. Also, the involvement of telecommunication experts in the audit process is important. And lastly, the constitution of the audit team members is very important.
Let's discuss our third issue, which is the political unrest and strategic uncertainty in Ilania. Here we are in an environment where there's political unrest and imminent indigenization laws. And definitely these two issues threaten MCOM's stake in JV Cellular. We have analyzed the 3 strategic options available for MCOM. Will MCOM consolidate and expand? Will it stay the course, or will it sell off its stake?
Now, option 1. Consolidate and expand. An MPV analysis of this option reveals that this will yield a positive MPV of about 140,000 million Sadiban dollars with a standard deviation of about 36,000 million Sadiban dollars. Option 2, to stay the course. Now, if the company decides to maintain its current 49% stake in JV Cellular, this will yield a positive MPV of about 13,700 million Sadiban dollars, which will actually be the year-on dividend that they will earn in perpetuity. Option 3, to sell off and walk away. Currently, we have 2 offers, one from Batini, one from the Turkish operator. The offer from Batini will give us a positive NPV of about 8,000 million Sadiban dollars. But let's not forget, these amounts could be confiscated because they will be paid directly into our local account in Ilania. The other option, that is to sell off to the Turkish operator, is a share-for-share exchange to the tune of 85,000 million Sadiban dollars. However, we are not given much information to make any decision on this option.
We strongly recommend that MCOM should consolidate and expand. Why? This is because this option yields the highest positive MPV of about 140,000 million Sadiban dollars. Also, the risk associated with this option is within MCOM's risk tolerance rate. We also realize that this option lies within MCOM's strategic priority of maintaining and building a strong brand, as well as to increase market share. We further recommend that MCOM should pay the extra cost of 200,000 million Sadiban dollars to increase its prospects of growing into Turkey, as well as to mitigate the effects of hyperinflation in Ilania. Finally, we say that the government should MCOM should continuously monitor government activities.
Moving on. According to a SWOT analysis, MCOM's opportune bid to enter the Tunisian market synchronizes perfectly well with the strategic priority of increasing market share and strengthening global branding. Now, a tactical analysis, however, reveals that despite the Tunisian economy's investor friendliness, it is saddled with high trade entry barriers. Now, the case makes us privy to analyze two options, the first of which is acquiring 51% of CloudNet and bidding as a local company.
In this case, on the assumption that there's a 50-50 chance of either winning or losing the bid, if we win the bid, then we are going to make net inflows of about 2,300 million Sadimban dollars.
Option 2. Bid as a 100% foreign-owned company.
In this case, still on the assumption that there's an equal chance of either winning or losing, we don't have much information to conclude as to how much inflows we'll be making. But of course, as a fully owned foreign company, it is certain that we'll enjoy 100% profit as against an outflow of 4.3 billion Sadimban dollars. In the event of losing, we are also going to incur the tender operation cost of 15 million Sadimban dollars. Our analysis also reveals that MCOM has a gearing ratio of 88%, which is not so far from the target of 100% required. MCOM is in a good position to bid for a license. Our recommendation is that 1, acquire 51% of CloudNet and bid as a local company.
2, upgrade to 4G or higher generational network because Tunisians are high data consumers.
And this is not just with Tunisians. You see, mobile telephony is gradually moving from voice and SMS to data usage. And the very #1 priority of MCOM is to innovate and maintain sustainable growth. It is about time MCOM becomes an industry leader in LTEs by establishing and investing in R&D or partnering with, say, smartphone manufacturers to provide mobile internet services to these devices, at least to secure that aspect of our portfolio offering.
3, we also think that as your consultant, it's imperative for us to take a second look at the gearing or leverage ratio and to improve upon it.
Let's also adopt a cost leadership strategy as a way of dealing with the stiff competition on the market. Now, the shared service center in Sadimba.
Now, the shared service center in Sadimba allows us to save a humongous amount of 6,600 million Sadimban dollars. Which is financially prudent given our beleaguered finances. The cost computations were made on the fundamental assumptions that transactions were first handled by operatives before being escalated to managers, with an initial cost of about 14,000 million Sadimban dollars before the shared service center was implemented, and then a cost incurred of about $7,000 million during the shared service center gives us a net cost of about 6,599 million in savings alone.
Also looking at this decision through the Johnson, Scholes and Whittington SAF test, we realize that the decision is both suitable and feasible. This is because it meets the company's strategy and it has already been implemented and is yielding positive economic benefits. However, not all stakeholders are happy about this change. Because some stakeholders are resisting change, Kotter and Kassinger change model prescribes that we educate and communicate the need for the SSC decision to these stakeholders and involve them. Let's now look at the ethical issues.
Now, business issues involving ethics are ones that should be taken with a lot of care and tactic. As a matter of fact, our decision to actually improve upon efficiency in operation has been misconstrued by some sects of the public and the media as a diabolic and chauvinistic attempt at smuggling jobs back to our home country of Sadimba. In the light of this, we consider that because members of the media and the public have high power and high interest, they should be treated with utmost care and maintained very closely. What are our recommendations in this regard? One, we think it prudent that we should hold a press conference or a press release to educate members of the public on the reason for this cost-cutting strategy. 2, as a firm, we also think it prudent that we actually constitute a compensation board to determine appropriate compensations for workers who have been laid off because of our shared service center decision.
The next ethical issue has got to do with failure to deactivate SIM cards. The company's failure to deactivate these cards can be interpreted as a scheme to avoid losing subscriber share and hence profits. It also presents the company as being insensitive to national security, which is at the heart of the Napoleon government and people. The ethical dilemma here is MCOM's quest for profit as against societal interest. Now, our recommendation is that 1, comply with the law, deactivate the SIM cards immediately. We can later appeal, as we have said, so that subscribers come back and register these SIM cards. So though we may be losing some profit today, let's look at the profits we'll be making in the future. Let's also release a press report as a way of improving our public image. And finally, revise CSR activities into something that is related to the security issues in the country. An example is introducing CCTV cameras at the borders of the country to tighten security. It will better our community rating.
Now, you see, on a normal day, releasing information to a government doesn't have to be an issue of a dilemma. But we have arrived at a point where civil society groups have called for us to back out of Ilania because of the government's alleged use of such information to perpetrate unlawful arrest. In the light of this, we actually have the following recommendations. One, we think it prudent that being a good corporate citizen as we are, and a business as we are not politicians, we should be able to comply with the laws of the land and give unbiased and objective information to the government for the use of its own operations. Secondly, we also think that because we have a 51% stake who are very close to the government, we should be able to have a communication with the government and negotiate on the use of such information. And lastly, we also think that we should be able to have a talk with the civil society groups to make them know the level of progress we've chalked in our negotiations with the government.
So even though it doesn't look so promising from our largest market in Nakolia, the stakes are still high for MCOM. MCOM has a very bright future, notwithstanding the challenges we've outlined. If we look at some of the strategies and we go by the recommendations we have outlined, then MCOM will soon be making a lot of money for our business. Now, in summary, what we are saying is that, one, for the security issues and legal wrangling, let us hold the court case, deactivate the SIM cards immediately, and ask for an out-of-court settlement. We can also ask for a negotiation to pay the fine in installments. A better way of funding the fine will be through debt financing, which of course is the cheaper option and also ensures tax shield. Let us also consolidate and expand JV Cellular in Ilania, acquire 51% of CloudNet and bid as a local company. And finally, talk through the SSC decision with our stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. We're open for questions from the board.
Thank you so much, Team Snipers. We really enjoyed your presentation and your logical flow of thought. My question is around your recommendation of the strategy we should adopt in Ilania. You said we should consolidate and expand. I just want to understand the rationale for that recommendation, knowing fully well the ongoing implications of the political standing of that country, the sanctions. What does it mean for our business if we continue to invest our funds into that market? Do we not stand to lose more as a business? I just want to understand, why should we pump more money into Ilania at this point in time? Thank you.
I would like to take that question. Now, first of all, we want everyone to know that there are three different types of risk. There's a risk we can afford to take, there's a risk we cannot afford to take, and there's a risk we cannot afford not to take. Now, the risk associated with the issue in Ilania is a risk we can afford to take as a company. Why? This is because this risk is within MCOM's risk tolerance rate. Let's not forget, the only possibility that there will be indigenization loss is 30% chance. That's what the case says, and that 30% chance will, if it happens, it means that they will make they will lose about 4,140 million Sadiban dollars. Now, the case says that MCOM is willing to take a 30% chance that a single line of business will take up to 20% of its earnings. That is to say that effectively 6% of the earning before interest and tax, which is about 1,319, which is way above the risk that this option poses. So in every case, it's an acceptable risk. Additionally, our operations in Ilania gives us the chance to expand into Turkey, into Cyprus, and to other Asian companies, which is also good. And then we are also saying that it is within our strategic priority, that is to build and maintain a strong brand and grow market share.
Also to add to it, we realize that our investment in JV Cellular in Ilania is the biggest in the region. And looking at the other options, I think consolidating and expanding will be the best in our case, because we can't either sell off or also stay the course. Doing nothing is not an option for our business. So the best thing is to consolidate and expand.
And then to add to that, let's not forget, the other option is to either sell off our stake to Batini. But let's not forget, if we sell off this stake, the funds could be confiscated. It is very important we note that these funds could be confiscated. And additionally, if we decide to maintain our stake, we are deciding to do nothing, and no business does nothing. What we do is we take on risk and we go for gold. That's what we do.
Thanks very much for the presentation. Maybe a different question relating to this. If one step back and one look at this company you see many red lights. Now, usually the first strategy when you see many red lights is, how do I stabilize the business? If one look at your recommendation, you're taking additional risk while a business is in trouble. What was your strategic thinking around that?
So we're talking about the risk. Yeah, I'll take this one as well. Now, what we are saying basically is that there's risk. In fact, doing nothing is actually a risk. Because how do you know? Because if you do something, you may gain returns. Now there's risk. But this risk is only a 30% chance that they will not comply. Now, in case the company does not, in case the government does not comply, what it means is that our outflows of 1,440 million dollars, we will lose it. But this is within the risk tolerance range of MCOM, which is in calculation actually 1,319.46 million dollars. Basically, we are saying that there's risk, but it is still within our risk tolerance range and appetite.
Also looking at this, saying that we should stay behind the line so that we don't drown. So what if we decide to leave Elania? The only time we can come in again will be in the next 5 years. Yeah. And what will happen after next 5 years, we do not know. Some other companies would have invested and would be ahead of us. But we have our investment there. We can keep it there and make sure that we are making the best out of it. That is why we made this recommendation.
Let's not forget, it's our priority to maintain global brand and also grow market share. Very important.
In line with you mentioned one of the first priorities is to settle the case court and pay the fine, right? You mentioned that equity is quite expensive and debt is the option. Can you share more your rationale? Because also there were an option if we sell to Turkey and get some cash that can be used for the fine. Why you guys not consider that option?
No, okay. Now, the case says that any expansion into Turkey currently will yield, at this moment, gives us a zero NPV. What it means is that our outflows and inflows would be the same. So the reason why we are saying that debt is the best option is because debt financing is cheaper. Secondly, it gives us tax shield, and we can raise funds on the international market by probably Eurobonds. This has a longer period, and usually the rate is lower. So it will give us more. And we are also saying that we have passive investment in the CDOM towers, and they are just there. We are not using them. Why don't we sell off or monetize them to use in curbing the fine amount? That's what we are saying. And the issue with the expansion to Turkey, currently every investment into Turkey gives us a zero NPV.
Thanks very much for the presentation. I will just make a follow-up to the previous question with respect to Nakolia. Did you consider the current cash flow position and whether cash can be used as a possible method of partly financing the loan? The next issue will be, of course, companies within cellular industry, if you look at sustainability, will have a lot of environmental effects in terms of the operations. What environmental risk did you consider in each of the 5 cases you looked at, and how will you mitigate against them?
We actually did consider the cash flows. If we can move in our appendix, we have ratios, the cash ratios. Let's not forget, at the moment we have interest cover of 4.8 times. It is good, but it's not too much. So what we are basically trying to say is that even though we can cover our debts as well, but moving the funds moving our cash as part payment is not a wise decision right now, because the company needs all the cash that it has right now to be able to deal with the interest that they have to pay. So that's why we believe that we have to raise funds by debt, because we have cash all right, but it is not enough to give it out by paying fines, because we need to meet the obligatory interest requirement of our debt instruments.
Now, with the environmental issue as well, we are just not focused on maximizing profits across board wherever we go. We are focused much more on sustainability and also making sure that customers' demands and satisfaction is being met. And that is the more reason why we actually looked at a second review of our CSR options in Nakolia, because we thought that it should be more focused towards the current crisis at hand and look at actually benefiting the country as a whole in the populace.
And then to add to that, we realized that the carbon emission comes as a result of maybe having too many masks as telecommunication industry. What we can do is that these days, about 5 or 4, several telecommunication companies can just share one mask. So to be able to reduce the impact of the carbon emission into the environment, we can just negotiate with our competitors, because this is for the greater good. Nobody will suffer, nobody will die actually. So what we have to do basically is to just combine or have the same mask with what we call towers, telephone towers, so that we do not emit a lot of carbon into the system. And also, there's limited spectrum that we need to manage very well. That's what we intend to do.
As the teams are presenting in alphabetical order, the 5th team to present was Team UKZN third years from South Africa. They offered their 5 key recommendations to the board as follows. 1. Attempt out-of-court settlement and then negotiate for a fine reduction in Nigeria. Number 2. Enter China via a joint venture with CloudNet. And number 3. Implement 2 SSCs, one dedicated for Nigeria and the other one for the 19 countries. Number 4, sell to Batini and walk away, but negotiate for payment outside of Iran to avoid sanctions. Number 5, sell network towers, issue debt, and then equity. Let's have a look.
Good morning, judges, ladies and gentlemen. We are a group of BCom Accounting third-year students from the University of KwaZulu-Natal and are here to present our recommendations for you this morning. My name is Stefan Wies and I will deal with all issues relating to the Napoleon fine.
I'm Mohammed Osman and I will handle the implementation of the Shared Service Center as well as our continued operations in Ilania.
My name is Rudy Wies, and I will discuss the finalization of the financial statements, the expansion into the Tunisian market, as well as ethical concerns.
Today, our recommendations will be based on our underlying strategy of streamlining our existing operations before expansion. Streamlining frees up MCOM's resources and allows the company to focus on core competencies. This creates a more effective and flexible organization which will consolidate its foothold in the African market. With lower priority, MCOM should then consider its expansionary opportunities, which is in line with the board's risk-averse stance.
Finalization of the financial statements requires the immediate attention of the board. This is due to the fact that the audit will commence in 21 days, and a delay in the audit may impact the audit deadline set out by the Sedimban Stock Exchange listing requirements. Now, there are 2 issues that need to be dealt with. The first, contingent liability needs to be raised in the notes to the financial statements in order to represent the Napoleon fine. The second issue is the sale of the impending sale of the network towers, which needs to be classified as a non-current asset held for sale and disclosed as a current asset. This will be measured at fair value less cost to sell. I'm now going to hand over to Stefan, who will discuss the Napoleon fine implications. Thank you, Rudy. The Napoleon market is of particular importance to MCOM, as it is the company's most profitable operation. A lengthy court battle between MCOM and the NTRA, or the Napoleon Telecommunications Regulatory Authority, will cause friction between the 2 parties and may affect the renewal of our operating license in the future. This current legal strategy has also and will continue to tarnish the reputation of MCOM, as Napoleons have the view that the company is an associate of terrorist organizations with no concern for the consequences of their actions. It is also highly unlikely that MCOM will prove the NTRA's lack of authority, as the company set a precedent by accepting the fine meted against them in 2013. Thus, it is recommended that MCOM does the following. Firstly, MCOM should request from the NTRA the details on how the fine value was determined. This will allow the company to assess where it is possible to negotiate for a reduction. Secondly, the company should apply for leave from the court to attempt an out-of-court settlement. This form of negotiation will remove the details of the negotiation from the public space, giving the parties more freedom to negotiate. Finally, through a mediation process, MCOM should negotiate for a fine reduction based on a variety of factors, such as those determined in Step 1, as well as the going concern of the Nicolian operation and the effect that this will have on the economy of that country. This process will yield a result that will ensure continued cordial relations with the NTRA and prevent further tarnishing of MCOM's reputation. I'm now going to move on to the fine repayment strategy based on the assumption that the full 58 billion Sidimban dollars will have to be repaid. Should this be the case, we recommend the following. Firstly, the full 20 billion Sidimban dollars from the sale of the network towers will have to be used, as this sale was made in preparation for this fine repayment. We're then of the opinion that further equity instruments should be used to generate approximately 31%. I'm sorry, my label seemed to have gone a bit skewed. To generate 31%, while the issue of, or the raising of a further loan should be used to generate approximately 26%. We're of the opinion that further equity instruments should be issued to a greater extent, as while it is a more costly form of capital, it is a less risky one, this being in line with the board's risk-averse stance. Finally, only 9% of the fine amount should be generated from the unutilized funds of the company, as these cash reserves are essential to maintaining a positive liquidity position. I'm now going to elaborate on why we have elected to make a greater use of equity. Firstly, the shareholders have already been approached and have indicated their willingness, and we feel that the company should take up this offer. Secondly, we are also able to avoid a fixed commitment as a result of issuing equity, because we do not have an obligation to repay this form of capital. We have made use of a loan to a lesser extent because of cash flow concerns arising from the fixed nature of this form of capital, because we have no choice but to pay this loan back regardless of our liquidity position. The raising of a further loan also has a negative impact on gearing, which increases the volatility of shareholder earnings. The shareholders will then require higher returns on their investment, and in the current state, we feel that MCOM may not be able to provide these higher returns. Thus, this is the optimal repayment strategy, bearing in mind the philosophy of streamlining current operations. I'm now going to hand over to Mohammed, who will deal with the shared service center.
Thank you, Stefan. We recommend a strategy of implementing the shared service center for the 19 other African countries, while maintaining a dedicated service center for our Nicolian operation. We will begin with the reasons why we have elected to maintain a dedicated service center for the Nicolian operation. Firstly, the implementation of the shared service center will export Nicolian jobs to Sidimba. This will aggravate negative sentiment towards the MCOM brand. Furthermore, a dedicated service center will attempt to hedge against currency risks that we may be exposed to due to the volatile nature of the region. The negative publicity associated with transferring our Nicolian operations to Sidimba may reduce our revenue. With fixed costs remaining constant, we may experience diseconomies of scale. Due to the volume and complexity of transactions specific to our Nicolian operation, we maintain that a dedicated service center is required. Transferring Nicolian operations to Sidimba will have a detrimental effect on our employees, as they will lose their livelihood as a result of this decision. Implementing the shared service center will sacrifice our long-term opportunities for short-term profits. We must now consider the 19 other African countries. We recommend that the shared service center must be implemented for these regions, as it would be more efficient due to economies of scale. The reduction of the cost of employment will ensure that MCOM becomes more profitable and competitive in these regions. In considering our employees, in the spirit of goodwill, MCOM should engage in constructive and rational dialogue to ensure that a win-win agreement is made. Additional corporate social responsibility projects should also be carried out. The strategy of implementing the shared service center for our 19 other African countries while maintaining a dedicated service center for the Nicolian operation is the most effective method of streamlining our operations. We must now consider the uncertainty in Ilania. We recommend that the board sells JB Cellular to Bettini. The fact that this is a cash sale is vital, as this will assist us in mitigating future liquidity issues arising from the Nicolian fine. MCOM should negotiate for the payment to be made outside of Ilania to avoid sanctions. The quantitative factors are inconsistent with qualitative factors. However, we assert that qualitative factors have a greater influence on the decisions needed to be made in this region. Qualitatively, selling to Bettini is the most stable option. This is in line with our policy to consolidate our financial position before reckless expansion. The sale to Bettini eliminates short-term and long-term risks associated with remaining in the Ilanian market. If we remain in the Ilanian market, we will be exposed to US-led sanctions as a result of the nuclear enrichment program. Furthermore, we may lose our investment entirely due to the draconian policy of nationalization that could be enforced upon us. The option of selling out share for share to Turkey's leading telecommunications operator poses a high level of risk. This is because we have minimal amount of information available to us about this company. As a result, we are unable to make an informed decision. As a result, the sale to Bettini is the most stable option and is in line with our policy to streamline our operations. I will now hand over to Rudy, who will shed some more light on the issues on Tunisia as well as ethical concerns.
Thank you, Mohammed. For its expansion into Tunisia, MCOM has three options. The first is to enter a loan as a subsidiary. Now, this is extremely risky for a number of reasons. Firstly, the political environment in Tunisia is not conducive for MCOM to enter the market alone. Secondly, MCOM does not have the economic prowess to enter a market dominated by 4 competitors. Also, it will be very expensive to enter this market alone, and due to the Nicolian fine, we may experience cash flow issues. Thirdly, MCOM is not as technologically advanced as its competitors, never having used or marketed 4G networks before. The second option is not to enter the market at all. However, because we have recommended disinvesting from Ilania, the MCOM board needs to consider other expansion opportunities. Tunisia is a perfect option for this, and this opportunity may never present itself again. Therefore, we are recommending that MCOM enters the Tunisian market as a joint venture with CloudNet. This is a less risky option, as CloudNet already has existing operations in the Tunisian market. It is also an existing license holder and a Tunisian company, which makes the license bidding process less risky and less expensive. Furthermore, CloudNet has also had the experience of rolling out 4G into a market, as it was the first to do so in the Tunisian market. Therefore, MCOM can use this experience gained by CloudNet in its rollout of 4G in Africa, which will boost it to the #1 service provider on the continent and consolidate our position in Africa. I'm now going to move on to ethical considerations. Ethical considerations plays a major role in business today. Now, there are two issues that have not previously been dealt with in this presentation. The first is in Nicolia, the legal issue in Nicolia. This shows poor corporate governance, as the directors are disobeying the law of the country in which they operate. This may have serious public perception issues, as the Nicolian people may believe that we are affiliated with terrorist organizations. Therefore, we recommend that the board issues a full public apology and confirms that it is not related with terrorist organizations. And additional corporate social responsibility projects should be done in areas affected by terrorism. The second issue is in Ilania. Now, the government there is in gross violation of basic human rights, with MCOM appearing to assist in this. This may have serious global public perception issues, as a greater importance is being placed on privacy and the protection of information by our users. Therefore, we recommend that MCOM immediately begins its disinvestment process from Ilania to ensure that it no longer has to hand over sensitive information. Ensuring that ethics are incorporated in all business decisions will help consolidate our global operations.
Looking at the variety of issues faced by the Board of Directors of MCOM, we have proposed recommendations with the aim of streamlining operations before expanding.
Today, our recommendations have emphasized the need for MCOM to consolidate and streamline its operations before expanding into new markets.
The Board of Directors also needs to consider ethics and good corporate governance in all its decisions. This will ensure continued and prosperous future for the company. With a lower priority, it should consider its expansion opportunities, especially into the Asian market.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your energetic and clear presentation. I have a question on your proposal of risk mitigation actions to get out from Ilania. And based on the current information, you decided to not go into Turkey because you don't have the information. What is the rationale behind that you believe that the sellout in Bartini, you will be able to take out the cash out of Ilania? What is the information that you might have, or the rationale that you have that you will be able to take out the money if you sell out to Bartini out of Ilania?
We are saying that we should negotiate with Bartini to ensure that the payment isn't made from within Ilania, so that we avoid that altogether. We avoid the process of taking out money from Ilania. So Bartini will pay for JB Cellular, our stakehold in JB Cellular, which is 49%, and they will make the payment to us from outside instead of paying from inside within a bank from within Ilania, so that we eliminate the process of removing our money from Ilania.
All right, thanks very much for your presentation. You recommended the use of improved corporate social responsibility project as a way to repair the damaged reputation of MCOM in terms of the failure to, in terms of the fines. Don't you think that why it is good, but it's now damaging the use of corporate social responsibility as a public relations exercise rather than a careful thought strategy in terms of the integration of the needs of the society to the needs of the company? That will be the first question. The second question is, I am impressed with the integrated thinking in terms of you, of course, identifying various risks and making recommendations which include your legislative, political, social, economic. But I did not hear issues around environmental. They might not be direct to the case study, but I think it has a very huge bearing in terms of the company. Will you share what environmental risks are involved in all 5 cases, and what mitigation strategy will you employ?
Okay, so I think I'll start with the first question, which was about the corporate social responsibility programs. So yes, while we accept that corporate social responsibility projects should be used for good public relations, we also and sorry, and goodwill. We also MCOM needs to consider that it needs to repair the damage that it's done, or that it's perceived to have done, because perception is very important in business. If our customers no longer trust us or no longer believe that our brand represents them, then we're going to lose market share, we're going to lose revenue, and that will detriment the company in the long run. So we believe that we need to repair the damage done by using corporate social responsibility programs. It's also in the areas affected by terrorism, so it links directly to sort of the misdeed that we have done in the areas.
We also feel, just on that corporate social responsibility, that yes, we shouldn't be using it for public relations. But MCOM has not yet, to our knowledge, performed any corporate social responsibility projects in Nicolia. And we feel that now is a perfect opportunity to consider that. And we don't recommend that the board advertise that they have engaged in these responsibility projects. We feel that the board should do this purely as a sort of recompense or a apology to the people of Nicolia as a result of their actions.
Okay. The second question was about the environmental issues. So, I don't know, how do we want to do this? So we're going to start in Nicolia.
Let's just go with it.
Okay, well, in Nicolia, obviously, environmental issues are obviously very important because it's a developing economy, and we need to try and ensure that the economy that we are working in develops sustainably. So in our decision to maintain our dedicated service center in Nicolia, obviously there are environmental aspects that we have to take into consideration, and the board will have to make those adjustments to their current operations. Okay.
Done.
In Tunisia, obviously, because we're entering as a subsidiary, we would obviously need to inspect their environmental policies and codes, and perhaps provide recommendations to areas where we feel that they are lacking in environmental.
I also think with evaluating the environmental issues, Africa is a type of market where each country is diverse. They have diverse issues, they have diverse problems, specifically also in environmental. So we can't just do a blanket analysis or solution to environmental. We have to look at it in this country. What do we feel is the issue here, and then make solutions to this issue.
Thank you for the presentation. Maybe first a comment. In terms of the sale of Ilania, wouldn't that just be considered as a scheme of arrangement to bypass the legislation and everything that goes with it? Just a thought. Then I like the view consolidation before expansion. So explain to me then the strategic rationale to then do an acquisition now.
So while we are focusing on consolidation of our market, obviously we can't grow, our business is not sustainable if we're not looking at opportunities to grow. And the only way, well, one of the big ways that a company can grow is through expansion. So while we are while we're looking at an expansion, it is at a lower priority to the board of directors. The issues that came first, so the Nicolia fine, the issues in the shared service center, and the Ilania issues are more important and need to be focused more, the board needs to focus more on those issues before its expansion opportunities.
We want to consolidate our financial position and our strengths at this point in time before we just go out and expand recklessly. We want to ensure that we are in the solid markets that will generate a lot more revenue than just going in and ensuring that we maintain our operations in risky environments.
We also feel that the Tunisian takeover or the Tunisian expansion is a medium-term issue. It's only occurring in 2018. So we feel that the board right now can start making plans to invest in CloudNet. However, the Nicolian Fine and the Sudirman Shared Service Center obviously take priority as they are current issues firstly, and secondly, it's consolidating our strength in our main market, which is Africa.
Maybe just a comment again. The worst time to issue equity is if you have a depressed share price. So consolidation for me would work, but not everything at all costs. Just a comment.
Right, thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. I quite enjoyed your qualitative analysis in terms of telling us some of the pros and cons, the negative cash flows, and why we should, go for each of the options. What I'm missing a bit is the quantitative analysis, because as a board, we're trying to make a decision. And although we are looking at ethical, social responsibility options, but at the end of the day, our company is also set up to ensure there's value to shareholders. And we need to know the financial implication of each of the options that you've given us. And I'm missing that. And even the readjustment to the financials, you have told us the implicating IFRS, but we are not really sure what does it mean. What position are we going to be financially?
Okay. This is in relation to qualitative and quantitative. Yes. Well, we have evaluated quantitative factors. However, the quantitative factors came to a conclusion that we would remain in the Iranian market. And now, with remaining in the Iranian market, we felt that quantitatively it eliminates or does not take into adequately consider the risks associated with remaining in Irania, and such as the nuclear issue as well as nationalization. So we felt that the quantitative or mathematical solution, which was to remain in Irania, didn't adequately, or it didn't take into account these risks, which were qualitative. And so we felt that these qualitative risks, specifically because we are risk averse, we felt that these risks posed a higher importance to the quantitative, and we felt that it needed to be emphasized, and we needed to consider, hey, these risks will be detrimental to our future operations within this country. And that's why we maintained with qualitative. Okay.
The sixth and final team to present was Team UP 116 from the University of Pretoria, South Africa. Here are their 5 recommendations to the board. Firstly, broadcast a notice regarding the deactivation of all unregistered SIM cards in Nigeria. Second, enter China via an acquisition of CloudNet. Third, proceed with the Shared Services Center plan, but retain a few key positions as compensation for removing the low-level transactions from affected countries. Fourth, retain current holdings in Iran and stay the course. And lastly, settle the fine by disposing of towers. Let's take a look.
My name is Caitlin O'Donoghue, and my colleagues are Kristen Williams and Genevieve Badenhorst. We are the consultants appointed by the Group CFO to consult on facing the current issues. There are 5 key issues being faced at present. They are ordered in order of importance with reference to the impact on your company. The political risk and strategic uncertainty in Alania is of highest priority, as it has a severe legal implication due to the enriching of uranium by the Iranian government. The security crisis and legal wrangling in Nicolia is of second highest priority, as it has a critical impact on your brand name and goodwill. The third highest prioritized issue is the Nicolia fine and capital structure implications. This has a critical impact on your cash flow and equity. The last 2 issues, the Shared Services Sentence in Dibba and the mobile operator license in Tunisia, are of lower priority, as they do not have a considerable impact on the functioning of your company at present. The ethical issues faced and their respective recommendations will be discussed at the end of each issue, using the CIMA's Code of Ethics, specifically the principle of professional behavior.
The issue relating to political risk and strategic uncertainty in Elania is of the highest priority, as the joint venture is considered your largest investment in the region. Failure to take the correct course of action immediately will have a negative impact on the monetary value of the company, as a considerable amount of income from investments and loans will be forfeited. Due to the enriching of uranium by the Iranian government, financial dealings with this country are considered a breach of international law. This causes financials to be negatively impacted at this time, as the dividends declared to you by JV Cellular of 4.2 billion Sidimbian dollars and the loan receivable of 5.8 billion Sidimbian dollars and its associated market-related interest will be forfeited. We evaluated 3 strategic choices to determine which course of action would be most beneficial. Strategy 1 will require you to consolidate and expand. Strategy 2 allows you to stay the course, and Strategy 3 will involve selling off your stake in JV Cellular and walking away. Your low-risk appetite and smaller tolerance of risk had an impact on which strategy would be best implemented, resulting in the conclusion that it would be strategically advantageous to choose Strategy 2. This strategy will allow you to remain in your original position and keep your current holding of 49% in JV Cellular, with the option to sell your entire holding at the end of 2017, which is presented to you by the current 51% shareholders. Dividends have just been paid into the company, and staying on course with your current investment will result in a higher dividends receivable in future financial periods, as the market is expected to grow in the foreseeable future. This strategy does not require capital investment or losing out on the potential investment markets, thereby making it the most favorable decision. Ethical consideration. The ethical issues being faced is the infringement on the principle of professional behavior from CIMA's Code of Ethics. There is also the possible impairment of objectivity. A recommendation would be to comply with all the rules as stated by the sanctions and to take care that the powerful people in the country do not impair your objectivity.
The second highest prioritized issue is the security crisis and legal wrangling in Nicolia. This issue has a significant negative impact on your brand name and therefore goodwill regarding the fine incurred in Nicolia due to non-compliance by the extended deadline. The reduction in the amount of the fine is causing discontent among locals, as they believe that this is a breach of their fundamental rights and are thus concerned about large corporations not being held accountable to the laws and regulations of their country. A recommendation would be to broadcast a notice stating that all unregistered SIM cards will be deactivated within a given time period, as determined by the board. Also, attach a disclaimer implicitly in stating that it is the subscriber's responsibility to register all their outstanding SIM cards until before time expires. The ethical issue is non-compliance, and the resulting infringement of fundamental rights is a violation of the CIMA Code of Ethics, specifically the principle of professional behavior. This should be addressed by actively pursuing unregistered SIM cards to ensure compliance with the governing laws and legislation.
The Nicolia fine and capital structure implications, which is of third highest priority, pertains to the material matters regarding the fine incurred in Nicolia and the required amendments that need to be made to the financial statements. The loss of 25% of your market capitalization due to the fine in Nicolia has a significant impact on the on the cash flow and equity of the company. As declared by the Group CFO, further reductions in the fine are negligible, and it is therefore imperative that a structured financial strategy is agreed upon so that the fine can be paid as swiftly as possible. This will aid you in retaining a good reputation not only within the business community, but also with the locals. And this will also possibly cause a share price increase after the losses due to the fine. The sale of the towers amounting to 20 billion Zimbabwean dollars has yet to be disclosed in the financial statements, and this needs to be addressed immediately. This capital will go towards the payments of the fine, but it is so important that it needs to be stated that it will not cover the full amount. Therefore, you need to liquidize your assets or search for potential investors in order to settle the remainder of the fine. The ethical issue with regards to this matter is a prolonged wait for the outcome of the fine, and this decreases your ethical reputation. As you have a moral responsibility to pay the fine, settlement thereof should be actively pursued to remedy this concern.
With regards to the shared service centre in Zidimba, the potential job loss in these currently occupied countries is a cause for concern for locals of these countries, as it can have a significant impact on the economy and their current employment status. The shareholders agree that it is advantageous to move all key operational support back to Zidimba in order to increase your cash savings. These savings could then also be used to help pay the remainder of the Nicolia fine. However, it is recommended that a few key personnel be retained in these currently occupied countries to decrease the impact of withdrawing the majority of low-level transaction processing jobs. A suggestion would be to offer the choice of paid-for relocation for your current employees of MCOM to Zidimba, or help aid them in finding a job in their current country.
We will now be dealing with the renewal of mobile operator licenses in Tunisia and the consideration that you are paying to compete in the tender. This issue is prioritized last, as there is no current impact on the company. Possible favorable outcomes of winning the tender will be economic benefits of 6.2 billion Zimbabwean dollars, which will have a positive impact on your cash flow and equity standing. Two strategic options were analyzed, along with the option of not bidding at all. These two options involve acquiring 51% of CloudNet for 2.7 billion Zimbabwean dollars and bidding as a local company, or bid directly and enter as 100% MCOM Tunisia Limited, a subsidiary of the MCOM Group. It was decided that the most favorable option would be to acquire 51% of CloudNet, which would increase the chance of winning the tender and allowing you the opportunity to expand globally. Ethical consideration only needs to be given if CloudNet win the tender. You should take care to follow all the ethical principles in buying the tender.
In conclusion, the first three issues are most important because they have the most significant impact on the functioning of the company. The recommendations of these issues are as follows. Firstly, you need to retain your current holdings of 49% of JV Cellular in Alania. Secondly, you need to broadcast a notice about deactivating unregistered SIM cards in Nicolia. And lastly, you need to settle the fine incurred in Nicolia as swiftly as possible according to a structured financial strategy. The fine, as well as the sale of the towers, need to be included in the financial statements. The mobile operator licenses in Tunisia is not of importance at the moment, but they need to be considered in the future. The relevant models that were used to reach our conclusion can be found in the appendices. Thank you for the opportunity for us to present to you as a board.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Maybe just in terms of your prioritization of 1 and 2, if you can just talk us through. I would have thought 2 in terms of Ilania wouldn't necessarily be the top one. 2 would be the priority. If you can just talk us through that.
For the prioritization, the political risk in our opinion, was the most severe because of the legal implications that it could have on the future functioning of your company. It could have a sort of long-term effect on your strategies and whether people will actually trust your brand name in future if you deal with a government that is under violation of international law. The security crisis and legal wrangling in Laconia was of second highest priority for us because you could have time to try and resolve the fine incurred and sort of develop a structure, in a sense, to win back goodwill and your brand reputation. So that is why we prioritized it as such.
Hi, thanks for that. So thank you very much for the ethical reminders and the ethical wash. That we appreciate that. Just in terms of once the dust settles, so I get that we need to pay the fine, deal with the crisis, sort our balance sheet out. We've paid the fine, we've dealt the balance sheet, or at least we're getting into stability financially. What next in terms of our operating environment and the opportunities, because we obviously approached all the time by all these very seductive opportunities, but we're not sure which one to fall into bed with. What next in terms of growing our business, or do we just stick to what we're good at?
We agreed that they must comply with sanctions in order to not get a fine in the future again, because if they would get a fine or something like that, they can get a very bad reputation from there, and the likeliness of shareholders investing in them then would not be very good. So they must be very careful with regards to legal crises. And
so your point is on a sustainable business, because I get it.
Because once you have a bad name, if you get a bad name again, the chances of investors and shareholders investing again would be not very good.
Pay the fine, lock down those SIM cards, and send out the press notice, and then focus on sustainable business. Got it. Okay.
To add to what she said, you would also then try and market yourself and saying that you have accepted that you had the responsibility of a fine to pay. It has been paid, and you will ensure that no such problem will happen again. We'll try your best. Sure. So.
Thanks for the presentation. I think you mentioned references to annexures. Don't you think it could have been good to demonstrate to the board through your presentation the quantitative or financial analysis that will then inform the recommendation that you're making? And if that's the case, what will be the high-level highlight? For example, you mentioned about structured financial strategy, but you did not share the details of that strategy. You mentioned about win back goodwill, but you did not share what does that entail. Will you expand on those? Thank you.
And it's also related, so you can maybe just answer it together. And again, thank you, because you really brought our minds to all the qualitative issues, ethical issues, and the implications. But like Prof said, it's the quantitative aspects that we're missing. And if I look at one of your recommendations, you said to us, strategize how to pay the fine to increase MCOM's ethical reputation. And I'm thinking to myself, as a board member, we paid you to advise us. And I was hoping that you would tell us what strategy, how must we get that money? So maybe just delve a bit into that. Thanks.
MCOM is busy at the moment dealing with potential investors in order to settle the fine. If that will not cover the fine, then they can consider liquidizing their assets, or they can also look at possibly selling shares.
With regards to goodwill, in terms of doing corporate social responsibility programs, not over the top, but to ensure that you are trying your best to remedy the situation and trying to sort of encourage the locals to actually believe in your brand name again. So in order to increase goodwill, that is...
Thank you very much. Again, thank you very much for the balancing on the ethical part. I think that was really important to see that. As it was mentioned by Artie at the beginning, I think that your strategy was to stabilize first the organization and then start thinking on growth. On that lines of stabilization, how holding in Ilania fits on the stabilization considering the political risk that Ilania offers to the company?
The question, sorry.
Yes, so basically you mentioned you want to stabilize first the company, just mitigate the risk that we have, right? So you decided to hold the shares in Ilania. How does that fit in stabilize the risk, the exposure of the risk that we have, if considering that Ilania has quite political risk exposure?
Maybe, sorry, maybe just to add to that. What was your strategic thinking around the fact that the investment in 2017 could be half of what it's now?
With regards to strategy 1 and strategy 3, they were high risk, and that goes out of what you want with your low risk appetite and smaller tolerance of risk. So staying the course and deciding there is like a good chance that the sanctions will be removed. Yes, so it is the best opportunity that we decided.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So guys, now you've seen all the 6 teams that entered the semi-finals. In the next episode, you're going to see which teams made the top 3. You must have your opinion, but tune in the next episode where you'll see who made the top 3. And last, as I close off, I'm sure by now you're really excited about this competition and you like what you see. So if you want to enter this competition as a candidate, as a team, then please go to the bottom of the screen and look at the website and contact us. And if you want to join this competition as a sponsor to change lives and set the youth of today to go into the corporate world and make a difference, please contact us and follow the website below on the screen. Thank you very much. This is Johnny Liadis, and I'll see you guys at the next episode. Cheers.